Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare.
Well, welcome everyone. Good to have you here. Those of you physically present, those of you online, such a joy. Today we are picking up the topic of death. And so a lot of people are familiar with in the Tibetan practice that we generally start at recognizing the inevitable. This body's going to end. And there's a 9-point meditation on death. Now there's 3 points, 3 subpoints. We're big on points and subpoints. But it's when we start, we just orientate ourselves towards reality. Reality is we have this rare and precious human birth, favorable to this practice, this opportunity to live in this body in this lifetime, and everything that comes with that. The opportunity to engage in the spiritual path, to find meaning and purpose in our lives, whatever your path may be. And it's temporary. Next thing, it's temporary. Death is certain. That's the first of the 3 main points. Time of death is uncertain. And then the third point is at the time of death, only Dharma can help. And Dharma, not necessarily Buddha Dharma, just Dharma, truth, nature of things. And it's so easy to forget all this, right? I got plans. Tomorrow I'm going, not tomorrow, Friday, going to Crestone, right? But I might not be here tomorrow. In this form, anyway. And so if we were to recognize the value of this life and then take a little time to recognize death is certain, time of death uncertain, and ultimately what matters at the time of death. And that's that third point. I really like to recognize what's really going to matter at that time of death. Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about what happens at that time of death. But death is certain, time of death uncertain. One of the visualizations is, our life is like a candle we set outside, in the wind. Might stay lit, might not. There's a lot of things that can happen. And the point of it isn't to be nervous about it. It's the point is that I won't be nervous about it. It's inevitable. At a certain time, death uncertain. That's just the way it is. It's the way for everybody, everyone I've ever met, everyone I've ever known, everyone I've ever read about. And if we make peace with that and go, okay, yeah, we have a limited time frame, then the inspiration is I'm going to live while I can. I'm going to use this life. Why waste it? We might stop saying things like, I have time to kill. And you're like, really? One of the favorites is, yeah, can't wait till this day is over. I said, well, I don't know, maybe you can wait. As each day it comes only once. Once. And so if we reorientate our mind to reality, the incredible opportunity of this life and the limited time frame. And the third of the 4 thoughts gets into karma, the imprints, the way we're conditioned, cause and effect. And tonight's portion in the text combines those two, basically what happens at the time of death. And from a Buddhist perspective and all the teachings, let us know that we have what's kind of store consciousness is probably the most common use. That everything we think, say, or do, all these imprints, karmic imprints, and so forth, they are stored in our consciousness, the store consciousness. And based on these karmic imprints, that's how we perceive and experience ourselves, the world we live in. Certain qualities and attributes pop up out of that. And then when the body dies, the consciousness starts just seeing itself differently. Okay, so it's not like you can get taken out of this body and thrown into another body. Consciousness, moment to moment. It didn't come from nothing. So, okay, so it was there. And yeah, I started seeing myself as this little kid, crawling around, start seeing myself. And we see ourselves, we experience the world. And at some point, the body ends and the consciousness starts seeing itself differently. So a lot of people have heard, even if you haven't seen shows where, people see these lights, the body's dead, they have these experience out of body and those types of things. And then some people come back, they have near-death experiences. So the consciousness just continues and would go into an intermediate stage. You don't have a body, but you do have this consciousness. Everything's pretty weird. And at some point, start seeing yourself in a new form. But it's just this continuous arising. The consciousness is there. From a Buddhist perspective, also underneath even that karmic imprint of consciousness is your Buddha nature, which is pure, primordial wisdom, nothing wrong, nothing harm. All the conditioning, all the conventional consciousness that sees all this, it's beyond that. And that's the journey of Buddhism, is to recognize that. And then you don't have to go through all this stuff. There you go. So I usually say that's, 2 weekend workshops and a couple follow-ups. But so the journey is to start recognizing what we are not. And you might figure out who you are. And so all the skillful methods that are applied are seeking truth, basically, the nature of reality, how we exist. And all these are techniques that just chip away at that which we are not. So you can figure out who you are. Good to see you. And so with this, we study centuries of practice and what the yogis do. And like my teacher in particular, what they do is every single day they meditate on the death process. What happens at the time of death? What happens when this element dissolves in the element? What's it feel like? What's the imagery? What's the sensation? What's the color, taste? And they literally practice dying every day and having all the elements dissolve. And then at some point, there's what's called clear light. This primordial, this clear light, this pure, that if you pay attention, you can connect with that. And then when the body dies, you're consciously going through that transition with choice and clarity. Most of us just miss it. But if you train, that's what they do, they train. It's very similar, I guess. The analogy would be to lucid dreaming. People can be conscious during a dream state, sleeping, wake, and so having said that, what's provided here is a very brief explanation of what that's like. And it's just kind of information to be shared, people think about. She puts a little thing here. If it's too heavy for you to think about, meditate on death, then skip it and come back later. Or maybe just read through it, have an awareness of what's taught to explore. So that's what I figured we might do. Get my spectacles on here. And pop open the text. One other point she does make, and it's emphasized in Buddhism all the time, is the attitude at the time of death is very valuable. So if you can have attitudes around compassion or care, freedom, joy, that's going to have a huge impact on what ripens just as you go through that stage. Anger, fear, insecurity is going to have an impact. But this really warmth, love, care, passion, that's going to have a huge impact. So generally when people pass away, we try to have it be a really pleasant, wonderful thing, no crying or anything, just empowering them on the next part of their journey. Okay, so here's the text. Over the first 4 stages, the 4 elements that make up the body, earth, water, fire, and wind, dissolve. The first 4 aggregates, form, feelings, discriminations, compositional factors, become weaker. So if you're not familiar with aggregates, essentially that's what makes us up. We have five aggregates: form, the body, feelings, the actual sensations of feelings, and discriminations, how we can discriminate between one feeling or another, or sight, something and another. And then these compositional factors, which would include like karma and imprints, habits. And then there's the 5th would be consciousness. All 5 together would be what makes us up and how we exist. So the first 4 dissolve, or actually become weaker. And the coarse levels of mind, okay, now we're to this consciousness, 5 sense consciousness and coarse thoughts, they gradually cease to function. So everything's weakening. Each stage is also accompanied by an inner vision perceived only by the dying person. On the first stage, the earth element dissolves, the form aggregate, our body, becomes weak, and the visual sense diminishes. Our body feels heavy and as if sinking. Our eyesight becomes unclear, and we have an inner vision of a shimmering appearance, like a mirage. So, first stage. Second stage, the water element dissolves. The feeling aggregate weakens, and the sense of hearing declines. Our mouth and nose become dry, and we stop having feelings. Pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. Those types. When they talk about feelings generally in Buddhism, it's those 3. Everything else we elaborate, but just something feels good, unpleasant, or neutral. We can no longer hear external sounds, and there's an inner vision of smoke. On the 3rd stage, the fire element dissolves, and the aggregate of discriminations becomes weaker, and the sense of smell ceases. Our body becomes cold and no longer able to digest food. We forget the things of this life, such as people's names. Our breathing starts to become more difficult, and we have an inner vision of sparks flying through space. On the 4th stage, the wind element dissolves, and the aggregate of compositional factors weakens, and our taste and tactile sensations cease. Our breathing becomes more and more difficult, and then stops altogether. Our last thoughts fade, and we have an inner vision of a flame about to go out. It is at this point that a person is considered dead according to conventional understanding. However, according to Buddhism, you're not dead yet, because consciousness still resides within the body. It leaves only after the 8th stage, the clear light. By the end of the 4th stage, coarse levels of mind have ceased. And over the final 4 stages, the mind will gradually become more subtle. The factors dissolving on these stages are the aggregate of consciousness, the mental faculty, and the energy winds that serve as the mount of consciousness, the mount of this very subtle consciousness. On the 5th stage, there is the dissolution of 80 of 80 indicative conceptions, along with the winds that serve as their mount and the subtle mind. known as white appearance dawns. The inner vision is of clarity and vacuity, like a night sky in an autumn pervaded by the white light of the full moon. On the sixth stage, there is the dissolution of the mind, of white appearance, and the wind that serves as its mount, and the mind of red increased dawns. The mind of red increased dawns. The inner vision is like that of a clear, empty aluminum sky filled with orange red light, like sunset. On the seventh stage, the mind of red increase, and the wind that serves as its mount dissolve. And the mind of black near attainment dawns. The inner vision is of radiant black vacuity, like thick darkness pervading an autumn sky at night. On the eighth and final stage, the mind of black near attainment and the wind that serves as its mount dissolve. And the very subtle mind of clear light dawns. This is the subtlest level of mind, a part of our mind that has existed since beginningless time, mostly in a non-manifest state. The inner vision is like the natural color, an autumn sky at dawn, completely pure and free of dualistic appearances. This appearance is similar to that of a mind in meditative equipoise, directly realizing emptiness. Very similar. The true nature of all phenomena. Practitioners who are familiar with emptiness and have trained in specific practices during their life are able to recognize the clear light mind and use it to meditate on emptiness. They even look forward to this precious opportunity to progress along the path at the time of death. However, ordinary beings who are not familiar with clear light or with emptiness are unable to utilize this experience and usually pass through it quickly. When the clear light of death ceases, our consciousness briefly passes back through the 8 stages in reverse order, the mind of black near attainment, red increase, and so on. As soon as this reverse process begins, we enter the bardo, the intermediate state, with a subtle body that can travel instantly to any place we think of as we search for our next rebirth. The form of our bardo body is that of our next rebirth. And the maximum amount of time we spend in the bardo is 49 days. We will definitely find our next place of birth during this period of time. And then we start all over again. Another lifetime in samsara. Okay, quiz. Anybody got all that? Yeah. So what's I find really profound is just that it's mapped out. This is what happens, this is what it feels like, this is what you see, and these yogis practice it. And I got to see my teacher go through this whole process. And just that amazing journey. Like, I mean, we're literally in the room just as technically he died. The sun was there. I was a monk back then. And in his case, what happens is because they train, they meditate, and then they stay in that conscious state in the body, in his case, for 3 more days. So they're meditating, and so the body doesn't decay, it doesn't get cold, 3 more days. And we're checking him every hour. I'm not checking, the ritual people are checking him. But we would stay in the room, with prayers 24 hours while it shifts. And then the ritual masters would check, see if the conscious is still there. 3 days later, the sign basically he's left, which is usually a little bit of blood comes out of the nose, or a little semen comes out. And And then at that moment, two big rainbows, head over the whole monastery. And what was really fascinating in our case was it was so big, it was on the LA Times paper that front day. Was these two big double rainbows. But yeah, they call it, sort of rainbow body. But and so they practice, and then they're able to consciously go through that next stage Bardo process and have conscious choice about what happens next. Whereas most humans, we just don't remember anything. And I'm a little kid crawling on the floor, looking for my mashed strained peaches, and looking for something to feel good. So this is information. And so many of you who've been in the Buddhist path, and this makes perfect sense that you're going to go from one to another. Consciousness continues. It just, well, here's something to be aware of and maybe incorporate at some point into your life. Those of you may not really get the whole reincarnation, rebirth thing. The takeaway here is what's always going to matter at the time of death is how you lived. What are those imprints? Do we want a death that we feel good about, that life has been meaningful? And then at the time of death, can we go with a sense of contentment, ease, peace, joy? I lived well. I didn't waste this life. And for me, I find that whether one has just a human, I'm in this body once. What's the saying? You only live once, something like that. Live it up. You've been around for eons, man. And if you don't get it right, you're going to be stuck in this prison. That would be a Buddhist view. To anywhere in between, like Christians go to heaven, or that other place. Doesn't sound so good. Whatever that journey is, the life is still the same, because what matters is how we live our life to where we can have, at the end of our life, a sense that we lived well. If it's the only one, let's die without regret. Let's make sure we lived well, that we're not dying with regret, that we didn't waste this opportunity. And if I'm a Christian, when I go meet St. Peter and have some good answers, then he quiz you there, I think, something like that. Or does he just welcome you? I mean, and hopefully not meet the other guy, right? And then from a Buddhist, that what happens is, again, it's very similar to Christian, is the karma we created, the habits and the conditioning are just going to be so imprinted that we just so habitually start seeing ourselves with these same qualities. And so that trajectory will just continue. So it's really nice to water and nurture wholesome, compassionate, loving, kind qualities, because those are what's going to be activated in the ripening of conditionings of how we see ourselves and our potentials. And from a bodhisattva point of view, that we've been watering, nurturing, and growing the bodhisattva path of generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort, concentration, wisdom, these 6 perfections, that we've been ripening them, that naturally our next birth, we just continue on this path. And we've set aspirations, set intentions for that. I was listening to a Theravadan Buddhist monk speaking to a bunch of middle schoolers. And then, because our minds are so determined about how we experience things. Well, what happens at the time of death if you're a Christian? Well, if you're a Christian, then you go to Christian heaven. If you're a Buddhist, you go there. Like, it's not like this is right and that's wrong. It's like we are conditioning ourselves all the time. And we're ripening our minds all the time. And we do it in this life. We see people in a certain way, we label them. That's how we see them. We're around these kinds of people. We experience that. We have certain habits in our relationships, in the things that we do, what we think good. We keep on. You may notice when you go live in a different area, we were just talking a little earlier about India with our little head wobble and our habits, and talk about, we started, the environment has an impact. We start living that way. These habits and conditions continue. But fundamentally, to live a good, quality, meaningful life, whatever your spiritual orientation, ethics, concentration, and wisdom, ethics is the foundation of a wholesome, meaningful life. Concentration is probably the single most important factor we can have in our life right now in the current times we live in, because of the attention commodity that is bombarding us with, not, wow, what's it like to pay attention anymore? So I think for me personally, more and more I've just seen that if we don't take the medicine of concentration, of cultivating our attention, we don't have free will at all. We can't even pay attention to what we would like to, because the mind is so hijacked. So taking time every day to cultivate some opportunity to have some free will and choice in your life, to engage in the ethics and values that make your life meaningful. And then wisdom, literally cause and effect. Am I doing the things that allow me to be the person I want to be or not? If I want to be this kind, compassionate, content human being, am I doing the things that make me a kind, content human being? Or am I engaged in a bunch of activities that are actually antithetical to that? Which a lot of us are kind of doing a lot of things that are antithetical to that a lot of the time that we're not even aware of, because we're not even paying attention to what I'm doing. And I don't understand the impact. So with mindfulness, I can start to recognize the impacts of my environment, of habits, of conditioning, and seeing the causes of my distraction, my anxiety, my discontent, my fear, my insecurity. Or am I creating causes for confidence, well-being, a sense of capacity, and connection, understanding that I'm a part of something that's unfolding, not any less than anybody else, not any better than anybody else. Part of this thing that's unfolding. Can I recognize that, maintain that, and that everything that's happening is an opportunity to improve? That would be wisdom. So whatever somebody's orientation in terms of spiritual or human philosophy or religion, the foundation of ethics, concentration, wisdom, the three categories of the Eightfold Path, are going to get you to, whenever that time comes, nothing to fear. Ready to go today with my Starbucks caramel macchiato. How do you say that? Macchiato, right? Sam got this for me. Thank you, Sam. I think I'm supposed to stick my pinky out when I do that. And so the opportunity here then with Tibetans are, they literally just map this out. And then yogis, as they get to certain places, they actually meditate on that. And then, anyway, experience I had with my own eyes was quite remarkable to see that happen. We took his holy body to India. Took about 2 weeks, and no smell, no decomposition. Did the whole ritual there with his holy body that you do, and then all the miraculous things that happens when you perform those rituals, and little baby footprint in a sand mandala, and his body melted down to a black blob that looked like a lotus, which was an eye, a tongue, uh, eye, tongue, something else. It represented body, speech, all melted together in this little lotus. Yeah. Wow. So it's fascinating what can happen. And what really impressed me about that, because I'm fairly scientific, I want to check things out. When I became a monk, I'm in India. I'm going to become a monk. I had it's really wonderful little bodhisattva monk. Took care of the kids, spoke English, attended to the monastery, always doing something for people. He told me a story of what happens when a great master dies, and he described it in detail. I wrote it down in my notebook, like, here's what happens. And he said to me, he goes, I needed to see it for myself, So he volunteered to attend to a great master as he was passing away. So he volunteered. And he described what happens at the time of death, and how the yogi stays in meditation, even though the body's dead, doesn't decay. He describes all this to me. And then what happens when they do the cremation, they create this little sand mandala, they put a big metal bowl over that, that's at the base, then the fire, then the grate, the body's prepared appropriately. There's a lot of ritual with that. The fire takes place, relics happen, and said my teacher had the mantra, Vajrayogini in his skull fragments. I have not seen that with my own eyes, so I'm reporting that secondhand. But these fragments happen, and then he said they take a bowl off and they look at the sand and they look for a little baby footprint. And if it's a big footprint, it says they won't be reborn again for a while. If it's a little footprint, quickly, and what direction. So he told me all this, and I thought this was fantastical. Like, I wrote it all down. And I had no idea that one day I would be watching all this with my own eyes. And then his cremation, we had days of prayers, water bowl offerings, all that. And then when they tear it all apart, the structure, everybody's there to see what's there. There's no hidden, like, oh, these special guys get to see it and they'll tell you. No, we're all there, and they're clearing away and everybody's looking, and there's the lotus, and there's the skull fragments, and they flip it over, and the old monks, there's a little baby footprint. It's pointing that way, the same direction the smoke went, which would indicate, next rebirth. And I'm just like, how incredible to see all that with my own, eyes. So that's the process from a Tibetan Buddhist practice in that sense. And for me, there's this tendency, we live in an American culture. We have our logic, our sciences, things we can and cannot measure, that sometimes shine away from sharing something like this because, some people, that sounds woo-woo. But why do you hide it? What I saw, right? What the truth. And then what happens is more and more things that have potential, are not, minds aren't open. And we don't know what's possible because we've never seen that or met someone who hasn't slept in 40 years like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, or someone like Jetsun Tenzin Palmo who spent 12 years in a cave, who you can go visit and have tea with if you'd like in northern India, go ahead. Or, these people that walk amongst us, that live, that exist, nuns in Gebchak nunnery in Tibet. There's, they don't lay in beds, they sit in meditation boxes. And they do inner fire, tumo heat, and they pass away in rainbow bodies. You can go visit. Like there's not like this secret thing. And but if my mind's not available, and I think by available, I wouldn't say believe any of this. I'd say, I don't know. Now my mind's available. No, that'd be interesting to see. Maybe go have tea with Tenzin Palmo. Laura and I did that. I think Chris and Kimberly did. I don't know if you guys. Anyway, you went to Cloud Gardens. So this then is a teaching that they just want to let you know. From our experience, this is what happens. If you're interested, check it out. And then if this is even something that we may recognize as an opportunity that I can die without regret, then our doors open in a meaningful way. Whether we think consciousness ends at the human form or not, we actually still engage in the same things that offer us a fulfilling, meaningful life. So when death does come, nothing to worry about. I was listening to a teacher, pretty renowned teacher today, talking about hope and fear. That's how we gauge our practice, hope and fear. There's hope and fear in everything. I really hope this happens. I fear this doesn't. I'm a little anxious about that. I'm hopeful for this, kind of attached to this. Really don't want that. You just see how much of our life is hope and fear, hope and fear, hope and fear. And talking about people's development. And a lot of spiritual practitioners of all traditions, and often will have an intellectual view of their spiritual life, but not a realistic one. I can talk all day long about, death, but my little quote that I heard once that really strikes at the truth of this is everybody like a good devout Christian. I was raised Catholic. I still love the Catholic Church a lot, but everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to go today. Right? And therein lies the deal. What if you are not afraid to go today? I mean, if you're a Christian and heaven's available, sounds a lot better than this. No death, no fear. It's the title of one of Thich Nhat Hanh's books. So we can live in a way today, or whatever our spiritual belief is, that there's no fear at the time of death. Even if we have just a materialistic view that this body was born, it comes once, that mind is emergent property of this chemicals in the brain, and when this body dies, that mind dies. You can still have lived a life that was truly meaningful, wonderful, and nothing to fear, because you live in reality that we're here for a little time, and you didn't waste it. You opened your heart, you lived well, you loved people, you took risks, you made mistakes. Maybe the world's a little better place because you're in it. I mean, that's meaningful. And if the body dies and the consciousness, that's that. Pretty good. On the other hand, if there's more, then those habits, those tendencies will start seeing themselves and ripen in a continuum. So that was the little description from a Tibetan Buddhist perspective on how that happens. And I didn't have a single person interrupt me during this whole talk with some kind of question or thought. So anybody got a question or a thought? Or curiosity? Usually it's much more dialogue. Nobody ran out of the door screaming. Oh, Chris. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I was listening to the Tibetan Book of the Dead,
Right.
and they talk a lot about the Bardo state, and I know that they just that she just wrote that it can last 49 days. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about kind of what goes on in that, because that sounds like at least in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the author was saying that it's really scary for a lot of people, and
Wait, you're killing the whole talk here. Yeah, go ahead. I'm just playing.
yeah, and so I just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that period of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so technically we're in a bar. There's these bardos, they're different states of being, and the intermediate bardo that you're discussing is this sort of bodiless way of existing in between physical forms, spirit-like, funky, weird. You're very detached. It's very scary to not have your body. You look around, you don't have it anymore. It's awkward, and so but what's going to fill the mind, the psyche, the images, the things that come up often can be very terrifying, can also be quite blissful. A lot of times, most people who have sort of that near-death experience, they have this brilliant love, this very radiant thing. But some people have a scarier experience. But what's happening is it's confusing. It's very confusing. Could be dark, could be scary. And whether those things, what's coming to the mind always, whether we have a body or don't, is what we've been nurturing in our mind and in our psyche. And that's the thing that is, when we talk about the essence of this life, is what have I been growing and nurturing in my mind? What is in this store consciousness? What is, what have I nurtured, grown? How do I grow, these connected, wholesome, meaningful life experiences? And so you're going to be a little less scary. You'll be a little less scary if you know about it too, right? So, but if you've had no teaching on it, very scary, right? You lost. A lot of people get scared just with in their meditation. They start to enter a non-dual state. So you're meditating non-dual state. Now you kind of recognize you don't exist in the way you thought, and it's like very terrifying. Like I'm losing my ego. And who am I? Like, it's shattering. It freaks people out. And then you quickly grab on, and then you lost your non-dual experience. So that can be true. Very similar as well. So the point of 49 days is technically it could go very quickly, or it could take a few hours, or it could take a day. But according to the text, like I think every 7 days you restart another one, and every 7. But the maximum anyone would be there would be 49 days. So it's not that everyone's ever there 49 days, but that would be the maximum. And so often when someone passes, we'll be doing rituals and prayers for them for 49 days in that whole time. And by then they should be seeing themselves with some form of a different body that they've taken.
Okay, so just one more follow-up. So based upon karma, if someone doesn't accumulate much in the form of the positive karma and is really a scumball, then they may the karma is going to lead them to choose to be, born as in the, the animal realm or the hell realm or the hungry ghost or something like that. That is what they would choose.
They don't choose it. You're the karma. Just, you're just pushed. You don't have any conscious choice at all. Karma's taken over at that
Okay,
point.
so that's where it says we will find our next place of birth during that period of time. So it's just kind of we don't have any choice, but we
No, the only ones who have choice are those yogis who have caught that clear light and stayed conscious through the process in that way. Yeah, the karma just takes over. All right, Holly.
You might have just answered my question, but first of all, thank you for sharing your experience with your teacher and his dying process. I mean, what a gift to be a part of that. So thank you for sharing that with us. I'm just really curious. These stages are very elaborate, very detailed. I mean, we've got white light, we've got red and orange light and black light and yada, yada, yada. Sparks, yeah, gotta have sparks. How do the Buddhists know that these are the stages, this is what happened? Is it that the yogis come back and write all this down, or how?
They've been doing this for centuries, and so and they go through this whole death process consciously. So they're conscious through the whole thing. Yeah, so they've been practicing this for centuries. Yeah, and like I said, that every day, and this is the Reader's Digest version. Like if you study that process, it'll literally break down on very subtle levels what happens at each element. Yeah. All right, Martha.
Yeah, hi, John.
Hi.
Boy,
How are you doing?
boy, oh boy, I'm just kind of blown away by this talk tonight.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, some of my questions that had come along as you were speaking, you shed some more light on them. And so two questions I have. One is there any like is there a way to anticipate what the dying experience might be for the ordinary person, for us ordinary people who are not in clear light, embodying clear light? And second has to do with so if we're on the path wherever we may be now, taking our baby steps and moving along, is there any like a confidence that my rebirth will, and my karma has been brought me, the causes and conditions have brought me to a place, is there some confidence that we will come back at least in a place where we will know of the path and be able to continue on the path? I mean, maybe not with a conscious like I was there and now I'm here and I'll keep going, but will the rebirth be expected to be where we will continue the path?
Right.
So two things, that question, and then about this being an ordinary person,
Yeah.
what is the death experience about? Thank you.
So the first question, it's the same process, whether you're ordinary or whether you're yogi. It's, you're still the same elements dissolve, the same things, appear. They're just more conscious of these stages. So they're just describing the death process. And then the clear light at the end, we miss it. We just don't, it's too subtle. We're not there. It's all confusing to us. So it's the same process. We just are not able to make good use of it. And karma just shifts us, we're just pulled. But in terms of being able to, at minimum, have another rare and precious human birth, yes, the cause for that is your ethics. So maintaining the 10 wholesome activities, body, speech, and mind, being a good, kind, compassionate person, or just simplifying that with motivating, having your actions be motivated by loving kindness and compassion, you're going to be okay. That's going to get you there. You've already accumulated this. You maintain those motivations of loving kindness, compassion. And if you can catalyze that, especially around the time of death, that's going to have a little boost even. And then in terms of maintaining the path that you're on, okay, we're watering and nurturing certain habits and tendencies and things you like and attracted to, and watering those potentials in your mind, those can be strengthened. And one of the things that Buddhists do in this tradition is constantly pray and dedicate, their merit and everything to be born, near good teachers, near their spiritual friends. And, they're planting those seeds all along. And if nothing magical or mystical about this, what you think about a lot, what you're attracted to, what you spend your time doing, well, what's that do to your mind? I'm attracted to doing this. I do more of this. It's, you're just conditioning yourself all the time. We do it all the time in this human form. We call it neuroplasticity. and our habits get strong. So you're doing that now. And so these potentials and habits and conditioning can continue to ripen. And so the more that we bring our teachers to mind, the path, the aspirations to maintain the path, we just keep strengthening those connections, right? And it works very similarly. And, we think mind is primary, body is secondary. So the correlates are that happens with the brain, but that arises from the mind. So the more that we water, nurture, and grow those things in the mind, then that continuity maintains. And so the bodhisattva path, we just keep maintaining that as best we can. And then, interesting things happen. And I've talked about David Gonzalez more than once, and so some of you know about him, but just things that ripen. David Gonzalez is 20 years old, coffee shop. Looks up, there's a couple Buddhist books there, picks them up, and instantaneously he knows he needs to achieve shamatha and cultivate bodhicitta later. And within just a couple of years, he's he can describe the whole monastery at Ganden Chartse Monastery in Tibet. He knows it intimately in his mind. Like everything starts to ripen. The teacher who oversaw the ritual of my teacher's passing was his teacher. He's a Buddhist monk passing through town, sees David, goes, "You learn Tibetan, I'm going to be back in a year." They were roommates at Ganden Chartse in Tibet in their previous life. I know you, I'll be back in a year. David learns Tibetan. This monk comes back, lives with him, gives him all the deepest transmissions of all the most incredible Vajrayana texts and practices. David's been a prolific translator of all of those, and just this incredible life. And but these things just happen. So those trajectories, those imprints, those habits, they can pop up, and sometimes we have an inkling of that in our own lives. That might be how proteges happen, and why is this kid so good at music? Why is this one so that, come out world, play that violin? Apparently I played no musical instruments ever in my previous lives, just saying. not even the kazoo. Kurt, did you have your hand up?
I did. I think you answered it, but just what propels you into the next birth is it the karmic, is it your balance sheet? Is it column A, good karma, column
No,
B?
no, no,
karma?
no, no. Get away from columns and plus columns and negative columns. It's not how this thing works, not linear.
So, but if it
Potentials, ripen potentials, karma's potentials. Okay. Even if you get your astrology done, right? These are potentials, karmas. These potentials are available. And certain potentials are going to be ripened, because potentials need conditions to happen. And so we're being propelled moment to moment right now in our lives based on our habits and our conditioning, the potentials, what we come in contact with. And so certain karmas are going to be much stronger than other karmas and habits, and some are, weaker, and then the conditions that ripen. And we're not independent, right? So even when we pass or whatever, in that transition, whose genes do you have? And I'm not talking about blue genes. I mean, parents, grandparents, right? All those genes, all those things we're not independent in any way. So even our transitions, our interrelationships with all these countless others that we've been a part of for all these years. I mean, you can track DNA down, and all of this is still a part of this all. So it's not just me, John. Anything about John has to do with billions of other beings I've never even met. And I have a certain aspect of how I see myself in a way that's my unique stream of consciousness, but how I exist is so intertwined, so interdependent with so many other things. And so the karma that ripens is not a ledger. It's, all the factors at the time of death, the conditions around that, the mind at the time of death, the biggest karmas that have ripened, the conditions that show up, and the conditions in the phenomenal experience of the world we're living in. So not a balance sheet, and you're going to say something else, but I got on a whole thing there.
Well, no, that was a really good answer. But so then when I'm doing Vajrasattva, I'm doing purification, I'm doing these things. I think I just think about things too, literally scientifically or something. But am I just lessening the propensity of the potential for those to be there when I'm at the time of death, or do I need Keith to remind me to think happy thoughts when I'm dying, or what?
Yeah, you need that for sure.
Okay.
I mean, that's without saying. Okay. But no, scientific mind's important. Okay, when you're doing purification practice, you're not just sitting there, wanting to get rid of reducing negative karmic imprints. What you're actually doing is creating wisdom and understanding and compassion and connection. You are multiplying the capacities of your compassion and wisdom and care, and applying antidotes. You're cultivating an incredible amount of merit, not just trying to minimize negative karma. You're applying the antidotes. You're bringing this wholesome mind to state. You are cultivating intelligent regret, understanding, wisdom, a dedication to be, helpful to others. So there's a mass amount of merit going on there as well.
All right. Thank you. That helped a lot.
Yeah, keep the scientific mind. And remember that there's nothing independent here. And that everything you're experiencing is subjective. That's very scientific, by the way. There's nothing independent about us that's easy to prove. And there's nothing that's objective that's easy to prove. And how we see and experience everything's always subjective. Okay. Chris, one of these days it's going to be Kimberly. I know it.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to make this really, really brief, but the scientific mind, it does seem like a super complicated multivariate algorithm here because there's all these things and they're all they're all dependent variables. They're all coming together in a way that we'll never understand. But I think there is, some algorithm of, Kimberly's karma, my karma, meeting someone in a group chat at your retreat that said you should go to Toshida, all these different things coming together. I think there is, I just think it's not a simple ledger, but I think, and there is a path, right? This is the path,
Oh, yeah.
the Eightfold Path. So it's like, if we do these things, we'll probably set ourselves up for a rare and precious human life. So it is on some level, it is, do these things and you're guaranteed a pretty good outcome, even if we don't fully understand how it all works.
Yeah, it's called cause and effect. You do those things, you have the result.
Right. There's a big, scary mathematical formula here.
But it boils down to 2 words. Be kind. And that'll take care of everything.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
That's the essence of therapy. Be kind.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, John.
All right. I listen to this. If you, yeah, I'll repost it sometime. But Khandro Rinpoche, she gets called. She gives this talk at Berkeley, and she goes, and she goes, thanks everybody for putting us on. Everybody that did all this flew me out here in Berkeley. She comes from India, Nepal maybe, and all that. And it's amazing how much effort and work we go through just because we don't know how to be kind to each other. And we knew how to be kind. We didn't have to do any of this. And since we can't be kind, well, we need to make up a bunch of skillful ways to be kind. And then, so I practice this, and then I'm still mad at my partner. I get angry that, well, okay, now I need to do this practice, and then I need this training. And so now we have these massive amounts of trainings and teachings and practice. And she said it would be totally unnecessary if we knew how to be kind to each other. And yet, it's incredibly difficult to just be kind to each other. People of different beliefs, different walks of life, different things, our judgments, our attitudes, our jealousies, our insecurities, our comparisons. And she said, if we could just be kind, we wouldn't have to do all this stuff. And so if we had that heart of compassion, of loving kindness, and that's where, a lot of people get into all the diagrams and all the this and that. If your motivation is based in an understanding of our interdependence, so I'm not delusional in that way, and I'm motivated by either loving kindness or compassion, everything else that happens after that is virtuous and cultivates a spiritual path for us in a way it's going to unfold. And you've nailed it. You don't have to do anything more than that. The problem is it's really hard to do that. But it's that simple. It's just, how do I remember I'm interdependent and that everything I'm experiencing with all of you is an opportunity to cultivate loving kindness, compassion, and understand my nature of existence. You might forget about that 15 minutes out the door. And so all these practices are just to get us back to that. And then the interesting thing is, if I can do that almost all the time, or most of the time, then all these other things just ripen, but, if I haven't trained my mind to even pay attention, it's going to be hard to pay attention to interdependence. I might actually get caught up in hope and fear. And if you want to evaluate where you're at in that, just notice how much hope and fear comes in your life all day long. Well, I hope this happens. Well, I really hope that, this doesn't happen. I fear this. I do this. I have anxiety. I have this. I have that. None of those would exist if you didn't have hope and fear. And hope and fear arise from I'm independent and separate. And this can either happen to me or not me. I want that to happen. I want that to happen. So that's a real beautiful measurement. But it's really simple. We just need to do a lot of things to keep it simple. But you really don't have to do a lot of things. We can just maintain what Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo calls kindfulness. Being mindful of being kind. And do that, we're in good shape. Then it won't matter when you die what happens. You lived a mindfully kind life. The world's better because of it.
I have a question, John.
Uh-huh.
So, as someone who.
Oh, right. We have to do the microphone so they can hear you.
Oh. Wow, taking it up a level. Hello, everyone.
You'll be here all week. Yeah.
Okay. As someone who works with people and a lot of people who are suffering, if you will, in relationship, a lot of what I see is a person's individual struggle to be kind to themselves. And so as I hear you talk about that fear and the fear of, of attachment or pushing things away or fear of not having enough and so forth, I'm just curious from a Buddhist perspective, if that piece is in there, like the be kind isn't just an outward piece, that it's from a, like, how can I be kind to myself as well?
Yeah, it's foundation in this culture, Laura. It's had to be like core as Buddhism made its way to the Western cultures, because they don't necessarily have those issues in their culture. We do. So, and every single workshop, every single retreat, every single seminar, the biggest issue in our Western culture is self-criticism. It's just pervasive. It's bigger than anything. And so that's always a starting point. And what happens a lot is that people will try to hold these ideals of I should be like this, right? Which creates a lot more insecurity because I'm not like that. And Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo emphasizes again and again and again that we need to really be a gentle, kind partner with ourself, and don't bash the ego. Build up an ego. Build up an ego that's confident and knows its capacity, has self-worth. And if you can't, you have to start there. You have to start. If you can't start, an insecure ego will not walk the path to eliminating the ego. Just not. And people will, Dalai Lama says we can passion see all beings of this, and Khandro Rinpoche will say, well, we have all these, we said a little prayer here. Do this for all sentient beings, may they all be happy on it. And then, somebody cuts us off on a road, or, somebody did this and I'm mad at them. And in other words, I have these ideals, but I can't even be nice to my neighbor, right? Well, we need to be real. Maybe I need to be nice to myself. I might be able to be nice to my neighbor. Recognize my value. So that's the foundation. That's the floor. And not to try to skip. We can hold these aspirations and attention, but in the teachings that I've been giving and hammering of late is the biggest waste of time is self-criticism. We want to talk about wasting life or wasting time. And we can be critical of ourselves for wasting time. Right? Now I'm wasting time. The time I just wasted actually can be a lesson but now I'm going to criticize because I should have done this and I should have done that. And so it's I think the biggest ailment. I don't think there's ever been in 30 years a workshop or a talk or anything that in this culture that hasn't come up, including, that very famous one with the talk with his Dalai Lama at one of the first Mind Life conferences, where all the psychologists and the best thinkers of the time and counselors were in there with the Dalai Lama, and they were talking about how Westerners have difficulty being kind and showing love to themselves. And Dalai Lama's like, that doesn't sound right. Like it wasn't in his mind. Tibetan culture, you think about it, you're born with pure Buddha nature, right? And this is just nonsense. And Western culture, we have original sin, and this is entrenched. So it's just two different minds, right? And so he couldn't get it. I mean, Alan Wallace was trying to explain shame and guilt to him, and he's just going. And then, he's talking to the monks, and the monks like, and then he asked the whole audience, anybody here feel like that? And everybody's hand went up. And these are like the great, psychologists and thinkers of the age. Yeah. And it just reoriented. This is a lot years ago. And now the teachers recognize that if you don't start there, none of this works. Yes, thanks for bringing that up. But yeah, it is where we need to begin, is a healthy sense of self. Can let go of that self. An unhealthy sense of self will just be a neurotic thing. The more and more you don't live up to an even higher ideal, Yeah. So we always talk about, and this is what I'll wrap with, is a tendency that we humans have is to compare who we are today with who we think we should be, which is just a thing of the mind. And what's real is to compare ourselves with who we used to be and how far we've come. Like that's based in reality. And can we recognize how far we've come and what we've overcome, what we've survived, and that capacity? Then we see that we're already on a path. We've already come a long way. Yeah. So all the conditions have ripened for us to come together. The intention of cultivating our hearts and minds, living meaningful lives in ways that can be helpful and kind. A credible amount of merit accumulates from this collective energy, and let us dedicate any and all merit that we have cultivated here today and throughout our lifetimes, that it may find its way into the world. It may be healing and supportive of all sentient beings. And may it continue to grow and nurture the qualities within ourselves to continue our own spiritual path. We may ultimately recognize our own primordial wisdom, Buddha nature, so we can be of greatest benefit to all. And those who care to, invite you to join me in the formal dedication of merit. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Om Tare Tu Tare, Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare, Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare.